Welcome to Pattern and Craft. I'm Courtney, and in today's video, I want to do a crochet tutorial about the basic granny square. We're going to get back to basics, and this will be a helpful tutorial for those of you who are beginners, who already are familiar with the basic stitches and the basic concepts of how crochet work, and you're ready to start your first granny square. So this is a basic granny square. What makes this a basic granny square is that we are using granny stitch to create a crochet square. So granny stitch is this stitch structure. I'm folding my squares so that you can kind of just see the section that is granny stitch. And granny stitch is groupings of 3 double crochet with a single chain in between each grouping. So we can see that here we have 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, and so on. And the other part of this stitch to note is that we are working into the chain spaces of the row below. So the row below is the same pattern, 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, chain 1, and this row's stitches are made into the chain spaces between the groupings of stitches. So you're working in between the stitches of the row below, and the next round will be made into these spaces here in the chain space. Also, this grouping of 3 double crochet stitches is often referred to as a granny cluster. It is a cluster of 3 stitches, not 2 stitches, not 4 stitches, 3 stitches. And I will be showing you a sort of diagram and show how it mathematically all works out to a nice square, because we are basically doing quadrants of granny stitch and doing 4 of them to create our square. So we have a quadrant here, another one here, another one here, and one here. And those 4 quadrants make up our square. And we're doing the same thing in every quadrant. And the quadrants are diagonally divided. That might sound a little complicated, but I'm explaining it this way, and I'm going to actually draw it out as well so that we understand the overall structure of a basic granny square. And that makes it easier for us to understand what it is we're making, not just memorize steps or follow a tutorial video, but actually understand what it is we're trying to create and why we're creating it that way. So I'm going to do a little bit of drawing. I have a dot grid notebook here. You could use graph paper as well. So the stitches we are using in this granny square are double crochet. And a double crochet stitch is indicated like this. So it kind of looks like a T with a little line halfway down, and it is 2 boxes high and 1 box wide. So it is twice the height of its width, which is the same for the actual stitch. A double crochet is about twice as high as it is wide. So it makes sense that we draw it this way. It also kind of looks like its symbol. If you look, we have the little top of the stitch and the body of the stitch and kind of a little yarn going across there. So it makes sense that that would be the symbol that is used. That's the universal symbol for double crochet. So we also have to notice that our structure of our square is we're starting in the center and we're working into a ring. So I'm going to draw a little ring below my double crochet. And then the other thing we'll note is we're doing groupings of 3 stitches. So I need 2 more. I'm going to put 1 on either side of this initial stitch, and I'm going to have them coming out from the little center circle there. So they're kind of angled, and that's how the stitches look too. They're kind of angled into the center. Now also, as we mentioned, the granny stitch pattern is 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, chain 1. So I'm going to want to put a chain 1 on either side of my 3 double crochet. That is 1 quadrant or 1 side of round 1 of my granny square. Now we need to do the exact same pattern 3 more times for a total of 4. So I'm going to turn my notebook And I'm going to draw the same pattern. I'm going to have the central stitch vertically coming out of the center. I'm going to draw my other 2 stitches to either side, also coming out of the center. And I'm going to add a chain 1 to either side. The chain is indicated by a little oval. So that is my side 2. And I'm going to do the same thing for side 3. Double crochet 3 of them. Chain 1 on either side. And then for the 4th side, same thing. Double crochet, double crochet, double crochet, chain 1, chain 1. So we have our round 1 drawn, and it's the exact same thing that you see here, but it's a little easier to see because, you know, when you're crocheting, the stitches cover parts of the previous round and they get squished together, and it's a little bit hard sometimes to see the structure that we're actually creating. And here we can kind of see everything drawn out a little bit more clearly. And we will notice that in the corners, there are now 2 chains because we have the chain for this quadrant. Here's our quadrant. And we have that butting up to the chain of the next quadrant. See, that's my quadrants, this dividing line. And that actually is what we typically do in crochet. Whenever we're making a crochet square, we do a chain 2 to turn the corner. So this works out perfectly mathematically and will create a nice flat square for you. So that's kind of why Granny Square works out so well. It mathematically makes a lot of sense when you draw it all out. All right, so that is round 1. I'm not going to worry about joining or chaining up or any of that yet. I will explain that in a little bit. I just want you to understand the overall structure of a basic granny square. So that is round 1. Let's go over round 2. So when we started this, we had our double crochet coming out of the center. But when we work our next round, when we're working around, we call it a round. When we're working back and forth, we call it a row. So when we do our next round, we are going to be working into the chain spaces. So we're going to work into a chain space. So here's our first chain on this quadrant, on this top side. So I'm going to want to put my grouping of 3 double crochet to go into that chain. Then I'm going to want to add a chain right before this grouping and right after. And then I'm going to want to put my next 3 double crochet going into the next chain space from the round previous. And then don't forget to add that little chain at the corner. This is our basic pattern that we're repeating for each side of round 2. You'll also notice that round 1 had 1 grouping or 1 granny cluster on each side of the square. Round 2 has 2 granny clusters on each side of the square. You can see that here too. So we have 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and so on. We have 3 per side for round 3 and 4 per side for round 4. It works out really nicely mathematically. All right, so this is our pattern for round 2. We want to repeat that around, so we can turn our little notebook and do the same thing. See, we have a chain 1, 3 double crochet into the chain 1, 3 double crochet into the chain 1. So let's draw the same thing. Chain 1, 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet into the chain previous, chain 1. So that's what we'll repeat all the way around. I can draw it without having to actually turn my notebook as well. We can just draw our little groupings of double crochets and our chains as we go around our little diagram. So that is our round 2 diagram, and we can see how it corresponds to the real thing. So we have our 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, then chain 2 for the corner, 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, chain 2 for the corner, 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, chain 2, and so on. Here in round 1, we had no chain 1 spaces. We only had chain 2 spaces because we only had corners. Here we have corners and sides. So our sides get a single chain and our corners get 2 chains. All right, so that is the structure we're going for when we're making round 2 of our basic granny square. Round 3, pretty similar. Well, let's start with this chain in the corner. We have our first chain of this quadrant. Remember, our quadrants are diagonal, so we're basically splitting our square into 4 sections diagonally. So we want to have our chain in the corner, then our 3 double crochet, our chain between the granny clusters, then another granny cluster of 3 double crochet, our chain, our 3 double crochet, and 1 more chain. So that's our granny stitch worked on that side, and we'll make this same pattern along each side. I won't make you watch the whole thing, but I am going to draw in that same pattern all the way around. Okay, I finished drawing that round 3, and again we have 1, 2, 3 granny clusters on each side. Each of those on the side is separated by a chain 1, and every corner has a chain 2. So I hope at this point in the video it's pretty clear what the overall structure of a basic granny square is. We're just building that same stitch over and over. We can see that the corners always look the same. We have 2 granny clusters separated by a chain 2, and then that same pattern, 2 granny clusters separated by a chain 2, worked into the chain 2 corner space of the previous round. So again, 1, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, 3, worked into the chain 2 corner previous. That's the pattern for corners. And then for sides, we have a single granny cluster worked into a single chain. Okay, I'm going to draw 1 more round so just we can see the structure really, really well. I'll create the first side of the round with you, and then I'll continue on my own. But we're going to have our chain, our granny cluster, our chain, our granny cluster, our chain, our granny cluster, a chain, our last granny cluster, and our last chain. And each of these is worked into a chain from the row previous. We see all those little stitches are coming out of that chain below. So that's round 4. It has 4 clusters total per side. There's a chain 1 between each cluster and a chain at each corner. And when we make the next side, that corner will be a chain 2. So I'll keep on drawing the pattern chart, and I'll meet you back when I am finished with round 4. Okay, and we're all done with that pattern chart. So usually when I make these for my patterns, I will do them on the computer so they're nice and crisp and clean and a little bit more perfect looking. But I wanted to draw these along with you so that you could kind of see how each round is built. So we have round 4. Again, we have 4 granny clusters, each separated by a chain 1 and a chain 2 in the corner, working into the chain spaces of the round previous. So I know I've said that multiple times, but this really gives you a visual representation of what it is you're trying to create when you're creating your stitches and you're making your granny square. So some common problems that beginners have is that they don't really understand the structure of the granny square. They're just trying to follow along with the steps of the tutorial video or the written pattern, and they might miss a step or do something wrong and not recognize it right away. So one of the problems is having too many stitches per cluster or not enough. Like they might do 2 or 4 and not 3. Sometimes it's forgetting to put 2 chains in the corner. They might do 1 instead of 2. Sometimes it's putting too many chains on the side. They might do chain 2 here where they should have a chain 1. And sometimes it's forgetting to put 2 clusters into the corner. You can kind of get into a rhythm where it's a granny cluster into a chain, a granny cluster into a chain, a granny cluster into a chain, and then you forget to make the second one for a corner. I've seen ones where they're looking wonky and they don't know why. It's because they've only done 1 granny cluster into the corner instead of 2. So those are common issues. The other common issue is not joining rounds properly or chaining up. So I haven't gone over that yet in this video, but is something we should discuss. So a crochet stitch is made from the top. When we make a double crochet, it's worked from the top down into a chain space, or in this case in the center, and then back up. So it goes down, up, down, up, down, up, but it's always made from the top down when we're making our stitches. But when we're starting in the center or at the beginning of a round, we have to go from down to up, not up to down. So we need to go from the bottom. So we have to replace one of these stitches with chains in order to chain out from the center and then work our stitches down into the center. We can't just go straight into a stitch from the bottom. They don't work that way. So it's much easier actually to do it when you have different colors for each round of your square. And it's a little bit more complex when you are using a single color and joining and going up into the next round because you're not starting with a new color. So when we are working from the center out, no matter if we're doing a single color or a multicolor square like this, we cannot start with a stitch. We have to start with chains. But if you're going to change colors on the next round, like how I have gray here and then pink here, you can start literally anywhere and replace any stitch with chains. So say I wanted to just change this middle stitch, and that's the one that I make into chains. So typically in crochet charting and for crochet work, a double crochet is replaced by a chain 3. And typically a half double crochet is replaced by a chain 2, and a single crochet is replaced by a chain 1. So here I've erased out one of my stitches and done chain 3. That way I can make my center ring in whatever way that I'm choosing. I like magic rings. Some people like to make a ring of stitches and slip stitch. Some like to do a slip knot. Some like to do other variations, but whatever central ring you're making, you are going to have to do chains for your first stitch to represent that first double crochet. Then you can just go right into pattern. You do your stitch, you do your corner, you do your 3 stitches, you do your corner, you do your 3 stitches, your corner, 3 stitches, your corner, and then you'll come back around and you've already made these 2 stitches. You just have to make that third. Then you can slip stitch. Slip stitch is represented by a little dot into that first chain and finish off your round. You could also switch out a different stitch. You don't have to make it this center one. You could make it this corner one. And in that case, you would have to follow a slightly different pattern, but you do chain 3 plus these 2 corner chains. So chain 5, 3 stitches, chain 2, 3 stitches, chain 2, 3 stitches, chain 2 for the corner, then 2 more stitches here because you already have this one here that you made first, and then slip stitch to join. The reason we have to join our rounds is they have to be complete, and when we get back to the start, we have to attach those 2 stitches together. So you can really do it anywhere along any part of the pattern. You can replace any stitch with chains. It's all up to you what you want to do. Now, if you are working one color and then same color on the next round and you don't want to cut your yarn and finish off your ends and weave in and start the next round, you are going to need to do the joins in a certain pattern. The typical way is to replace this stitch with chains, slip stitch into here, replace this stitch with chains, and so on. Every corner stitch is made into chains, and then you join and then work over this little join with these two stitches. I don't actually love that way. I have a different way that I call my invisible join, and I made a separate video on that. So once you've watched this video, I want you to go watch that video to see the different ways of joining single color granny squares. And I can show you one way that's a little bit more invisible than the way I just showed. That is the typical way that most people teach. So I do have that separate video. I'll link it in the description of this video. For this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make that first round, but then also when we come in for our second, third, fourth rounds, I'm going to show you how to make a standing double crochet so we don't have to chain up other than for the first round. So I'll show you all that in the next section of the video where I actually put this into action and make the actual crochet square. But this part is so important and is not usually taught. Understanding the structure of our granny square. I feel like that's such an important step, and most people don't teach it and most people don't learn it. So I wanted to give you this information just so you kind of have a map to follow. All right, now I'm going to demo how to make this little granny square, but I'm going to have this sort of available off to the side, or maybe you can screenshot it and use that as your own reference as well. So I'm going to go get my hooks and yarn and I will show you how to create this. Okay, I'm back. I have my yarn and my hook. I would suggest for whatever yarn you're picking to use, you use something that's not far too thin or very thick and that is not fuzzy. Those chenille yarns are very appealing in the craft store. They are nice and soft and they are marketed to beginners, but they are not very easy to crochet with, so do avoid those fuzzy chenille yarns. And also I would not use any dark colors like black or navy at first. It's really hard to see your stitches with those. And I would also not probably use anything with a lot of variegation to it. You just really want something clean and simple that you can see your stitches really clearly. Okay, I'm going to show the magic ring. That is my favorite start, and I think that's something that every beginner should learn at some point, and why not now? You've already learned how to make a crochet chart. Why not learn a magic ring as well? It's not that hard. You just want to grab the tail of your yarn with your fingers and then put these two fingers next to each other. Wrap your yarn over, behind, over again in such a way that you get this little X shape. And we're going to go under the top of the X with our hook, over the other side on the top of the X, and sort of angle our hook down and pull that side through and under and kind of twist as you come out. You do this kind of twisting motion and then yarn over. Then I like to reposition my hands while I'm holding my little yarn over loop with my finger and simply pull that yarn over through the loop on our hook. And now we have our starting ring here. It's a little bit big, so I'm going to pull the tail to make it smaller. And we have a chain one right here securing our ring. And I'm going to be working over the ring as well as the tail as I create the stitches of this round. Now I'm going to chain 2. 1, 2. That creates a total of 3 chains, and that represents a double crochet. And we can go to our chart and we can look and see, where do we want to start? Do we want to start in a corner? Do we want to start in the middle of a cluster? Do we want to start at the start of a cluster? like to start at the start of a cluster personally sometimes because it's easy to remember. So we have one and we just need to make 2 more double crochets to complete our cluster. So I yarned over, I'm going to pull up a loop, yarn over again. So I have 4 loops on my hook, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. That's a double crochet. Do the same thing, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, 4 loops on the hook, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So now we have 3 double crochet worked into the ring, and we can look at our reference here. So we have the 3 stitches. Now we need to do a chain 2, which gets us around the corner. So chain 2, 1, 2 for our corner chain space, and then create 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3, all into that ring, working over the ring and the tail. So now we have 2 clusters with the chain 2 between. So we need to do another chain 2, 1, 2, and then we need to make another cluster of 3 double crochet. So 1, 2, and 3. So now you can say we have 1, 2, 3 clusters of 3 stitches each going into the center, and we have chain 2s between these 3 clusters. We need to do a chain 2 for our corner, 1, 2, and we need to do the final cluster of 3 because we need 4 total, just like our diagram shows. We need to have 1, 2, 3, 4 clusters, each separated by a chain 2. So I've just made my chain 2. I just need to do 3 more double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And then I don't want to forget that chain 2, 1, 2, and I'm done. But I need to cinch my center ring shut, so I'm going to pull this tail slowly. So we've pulled that tail, we've got our center cinched, but you will notice that this is not a round. It is going around, but it has not been joined. We need these chain 2 to connect to the first stitch of our round so that it looks the same as all of our other corners. So one way to do this that is taught by most crocheters on YouTube is to connect that with a slip stitch. So you pull up a loop in that first stitch of the round and pull that through the loop on the hook, and that does connect it. Now we've got our round connected to the first stitch. We can see all of our corners pretty easily. We have all of our groups, and then they will also tell you to chain 1, cut your yarn, and pull this out, the tail. And that creates a knot. I am not a big fan of knots in crochet. I don't think that looks great. So I don't love to do that. It totally works. You can do it that way, but the way I prefer to finish my rounds and join them is a little different. I'm going to undo this little knot here, and I'm going to go back a couple steps. So I'm going to go back to where I need to make my chain 2. I just pulled the tail to unravel a bit. So I'm going to do my chain 2 for the corner. And we're back to where we want to join the round so that we get this nice corner chain space in every corner. I'm going to actually, well, I've already cut my yarn, but pretend I just cut my yarn for the first time, and I'm going to pull that through. And you might be like, what are you doing? It's not connected yet. No, it's not. But I'm going to thread this onto a needle, and I like to use tapestry needles. I have a little set of a few, and I thread that end on. You'll just want a needle that has a pretty wide eye, wide enough for yarn to go through, and I prefer a blunt tip so it's not sharp. And then we're gonna do an invisible finish. So we're gonna put our yarn through the side of not the stitch at the very end, the first stitch. We're gonna go to the second stitch, stick our needle through those two loops of the top of that stitch, and then through the loop at the end of this chain and pull that tight. And that makes a cleaner finish that doesn't have a knot. You're just going over that stitch and it makes it look the same on the edge as all of your other edges. It's called a needle finish. And you have to get out your needle anyway to weave in these ends, so might as well do the needle finish for a cleaner end instead of a knot. So next we just kind of hide our ends in our crochet work. I like to get this tail down to the center and go through the bottom of all the stitches. There's kind of a little ring of stitches here around our center ring, and I like to just hide the tail in there. And then we're gonna have to weave in our original tail too, the one where we started the actual center of our work. So I just go through a couple of these stitches just to hide that tail and then cut it off. This also reinforces the center of our square because this little ring is holding all the central stitches of the square, so you want it to be nice and strong and not undo. Then I'm going to weave in this other end as well. Make sure you're going in the same direction as your yarn is already going in. So you can see it's coming from the left side here, so I want to continue going in a clockwise direction. It's coming from this direction, so I want to keep going in that direction. I don't want to go back the other direction because then I would be undoing my central ring and my stitches would have nothing to stick to because I would be unraveling the center. So I just want to keep going in the same direction for a few stitches and hide that other end. This is the most annoying part of making granny squares, is getting rid of all your ends. So we finished round one now. You just need to clip off that end. And this is the reverse of the work, and this is the front. So you can see we have all of our little stitches that we need to have. We have our granny clusters of 3 double crochet, 1 cluster for each of the 4 sides, and we have our chain 2 corners on all of the 4 corners. And that matches right up with the center of our diagram for the round 1 section of our chart. So that's that. Now we need to create our next round. So I'm gonna choose the same colors I have over here. I'm gonna do the light pink, and you'll probably want to use the same type of yarn if you're doing different colors, or at least the same weight and style of yarn if it's not the exact same yarn, so that you don't get thicks and thins and different weight yarns on each round. You want to kind of be consistent with your yarn choice throughout your project. So I'm going to teach you now how to do a standing double crochet, because that is how we will join the next round. I like to do a standing double crochet because it looks exactly like a stitch, and it has worked from the top to the bottom like a normal stitch. So you can do one of two things. You can create a slip knot and stick that on your hook and start from there. Or you can simply drape your yarn tail over your hook. So take your yarn tail, drape it over, and then pull it around and over. And that kind of locks the tail. You just have to kind of hold the tail until you start stitching. So I'll either have my slip knot on my hook or just wrap my yarn around like that. yarn over, insert my hook into any chain space, any corner chain space there, it doesn't really matter which one, pull up a loop, yarn over again, so I have 4 loops on my hook, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. So now I have a double crochet on my hook. So I just did a standing double crochet. Next, I need to do however many more stitches I want to do. So I just made a double crochet, but it could represent any of these double crochet anywhere along my pattern chart. Let's pretend it's this one. So I need to make 2 more stitches. So I'm going to do 1, 2, double crochet into the corner chain space again, just working into this space between the stitches. And now I have 3, so that is 1 cluster. And if I'm saying that's this cluster, then I can chain 2 and make 1 more cluster into the corner. I could also say, hey, that cluster could just represent this cluster of stitches, and then I would chain 1 and move to the next chain space and do the full corner. But I want to make a full corner right now, so I'll just go ahead and chain 2, 1, 2, and work into the same corner chain space with another granny cluster. So 1, 2, 3 double crochet. Do you see how freeing this is now? We're not just trying to follow steps and memorize and do it in one particular way. We can choose whichever way we want because we understand the structure of the pattern we're trying to create. So we can start here, we can start here, we can start there. It doesn't really matter. We can start anywhere we want and we won't get confused because we understand the structure of our pattern. So I've done 1 corner now. I've done a granny cluster, a chain 2, and another granny cluster. And now I'm on a side, so I need a chain 1 because I'm going to make another cluster in the next corner to create another corner. But we always do at least a chain 1 between clusters. And if we're in a corner, we do a chain 2. But I'm not in a corner, I'm along a side. So I did a chain 1. Now I'm going to make 3 double crochet in the next corner chain space, right in that space between these 2 clusters of stitches. So I'm going to do 3 double crochet into that corner chain space. So there we go. We've got half of a corner now, and we've got a full side. 1, 2 clusters for round 2 makes a side. Now I need to chain 2 for the corner, 1, 2, and then make a full cluster again into the same corner chain space. So 1, 2, and 3. And there we go. We've got 2 corners. We got half a side over here. So I need to chain 1 and make my next cluster in the next corner. Cluster of 3 stitches, no more, no less. Just 3 double crochet every time. It's really easy to remember. There we go. We've got this side done. We need to chain 2 for the corner because this is the corner of our square. 1, 2, and then what do? Well, we make another granny cluster into this same corner chain space because every corner gets 2 clusters worked into it, doesn't it? So we can kind of just look at our work and know where we're at. We don't have to follow a written pattern. We just need to understand what it is we're doing. So I've made half a corner. That means I need to make another 3 double crochet into the same corner chain space. I already have my chain 2. So 1, 2, 3 double crochet in the same corner chain space. And now we can look at our work and see that we need one more corner. And we've worked 2 clusters into this corner, so we don't need to work any more in there. That's another mistake beginners can make, is they'll do 3 clusters in this corner or something because they don't really understand the structure of the basic granny square, and they might get confused and repeat this step and then end up with way too many stitches in one corner. So we know for corners, we always have 2 granny clusters going into one corner. Now I'm on a side, so how many chains do I need between my clusters? I need 1. Now I work into the corner and I do a granny cluster, so 3 double crochet into that corner chain space. And then because it is a corner, I need 2 chains between this cluster and the next. So 1, 2 chains for the corner. And then another cluster in the corner because we always put 2. So 3 stitches for a cluster. And we need to do a chain 1 for between clusters, and we're back at that first cluster. Another mistake someone might make here is to put another cluster here, but we already have 2 in the corner, so we don't need any more. We have 2 here, so we're good. We're done with this round. We just need to join. And you can do either the traditional method of a slip stitch into that first stitch. So insert your hook into the top of the first stitch of the round, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then pull that loop through the loop on our hook for a slip stitch. And then you can chain 1, cut your yarn and pull that out, or you can do it the other way where we do not slip stitch. We just cut our yarn, pull it out of the last stitch, or in this case a chain, and then weave it in. And remember, the way we do this is we do not go into this first stitch. We skip that one. We go into the second stitch through both loops from the side, and then down through this loop of the chain. I'll show you how to do it into a stitch next. I'm going to do something a little different on the next round so that joins our round. Our round's all connected everywhere and looks the same all around because we want each of the 4 sides and 4 corners to look the same all the way around our square, which it does. And that completes round 2 from our diagram. Now I'll go ahead and weave in these ends off screen, and then we can work round 3 together, and I'll show you another variation. Okay, now we're ready to do round 3. So I have my dark pink yarn here, just following the same colors that I did with my sample. This time I'll do a slip knot start for my standing double crochet. So just stick a slip knot onto your hook and tighten it up and yarn over and kind of hold that yarn over with your finger. I'm also going to start in the middle of a cluster rather than at the start of a cluster before we did 1, 2, 3 in a row. I'm going to do 2 stitches. So I'm going to pull up a loop and yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2 for my standing double crochet using a slip knot start. So you do get a little bit of a knot right there, but it's a little more secure as well. And then I'm going to make 1 more double crochet, but I'm not going to make a 3rd. I'm going to leave it like that because sometimes I think it looks a lot nicer to join from stitch to stitch rather than from chain to stitch like we've been doing. Now I'm going to do a chain 2 for the corner. We always do a chain 2 in the corner. And then I'm going to make a full granny cluster for my second cluster of the corner. So that's 3 double crochet. But I do need to remember when I come around and I finish up, I do need to make that last stitch there to make this cluster a full 3 stitches. And right now it's just 2. Okay, so I've worked 2 clusters, well, almost 2 clusters into the corner. What do I need to do next? I need to chain 1 before I work my next cluster, because we always do a chain 1 between clusters, unless it's a corner where we do 2. Now it's a side chain space, so I only need 1 cluster when it's a side, not a corner. So I work 3 double crochet to create 1 granny cluster in this chain space along this first side, just like it shows me to do in our stitch chart. And then I chain 1 and work my next corner, because it's a corner chain space, easy to see because it's at the corner. So work 2 granny clusters into the corner, which means 3 double crochet, chain 2 for the corner, 1, 2, and then 3 more double crochet into the same corner chain space, 1, 2, and 3. So my tutorial isn't really a follow along and learn, it's more like learn and then follow along. So learn what the stitch pattern should be and then practice along with me now that you know what it should be. So if we look here, we have the pattern that we should have. We have our corner, chain 1, a single granny cluster into the side, a chain 1, and then our corner, which is a granny cluster, a chain 2, and then a second granny cluster. Now we chain 1 because we're going to have at least a chain 1 between every cluster. Chain 2 if it's a corner, chain 1 if it's a side. Here's my next chain space. I can see it's a side chain space, so I only work 3 double crochet there for a single granny cluster. I don't need to do 2 in there because it's not a corner, it's a side. There we go. Then chain 1 and then work the corner. So 2 granny clusters separated by a chain 2 worked into the same corner chain space. So 1 granny cluster, chain 2, and then the second granny cluster, 1, 2, 3 double crochet. Every time we do a cluster, it is made up of 3 double crochet, no more, no less. Every cluster gets 1 chain between. Every corner gets 2 chains and 2 clusters worked into the previous chain space. All right, so that's the pattern. Just keep on working your way around, doing the same thing on every side or every quadrant of your square. And you should be starting to remember the pattern now, but if you don't remember, you have this to refer to, and that's the structure that you are trying to create as we make our stitches. So I'm at another corner. I bet you can tell me by now what I need to do in a corner, right? I need to do 2 granny clusters with a chain 2 between them, right? 1, 2 chains for the corner, and then 1 more granny cluster into the same corner chain space, just like that. There we go. We're almost done. We just need to do 1 more side and finish up this corner. So I just made a double crochet. I need to do a chain 1 before I make my next cluster of stitches, and then I make 1 cluster into this side chain space here. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and now I need to finish this cluster here. I have 3 here, but I only have 2 here, So I need to make 1 double crochet into this corner chain space. So that's all the stitches I need for this round. I'm going to do a needle finish again. So I cut my yarn and I pull it out through the top of the stitch. Previously we pulled out through a chain, but you can do the same exact thing if it's ending with a stitch and not a chain. You just pull that yarn right out the top, and then we are going to thread this onto our needle and weave in our ends after we do our needle finish. So for our needle finish, we have our yarn coming out of the top of this stitch, this last stitch of the round. And this is the first stitch of the round right here. And we want to skip that stitch. Remember, we're making a loop basically over the top of this stitch. So we don't want to make the loop go through the stitch. We want it to go over it. So we skip to the second stitch after this first stitch. And we go through both loops of the top of that stitch. See? And we go from the side to side, front to back. Pull the yarn, but not super tight, just about like that. And now, instead of before we went through the chain, now we're going to go through the stitch, and we're going to go down through the center of the stitch through the 2 loops. So down through the center of the stitch, and I kind of catch the loop behind too, but I'm basically going into one of these V's. I'm going into the last stitch of the round through the middle. And then I pull that yarn tail until it's even with all the other stitches, just like that. And it's an invisible finish. You can't really tell where the round began and where it ended when you finish it this way. You don't have any knots. It looks really nice and clean, so I like that. I'm going to go ahead and weave that in, and then I will meet you for round 4, the last round of this tutorial. There we go. That is round 3, all clean and finished, and we are ready to do round 4. But just so we see, we have 3 clusters on every side. That means we did round 3 correctly. And we have 2 clusters into every corner, and we have the correct amount of chains between each cluster. Now we can pick up our last color, which is the purple. And of course you could do any color combo you want. I'm just following the one I already had for my sample. So for this round, I'm actually going to start with a chain instead of a stitch, just in case you're not comfortable making that standing double crochet. And just so it's extra secure, we're going to start with a slip knot. Put that slip knot on your hook. Insert your hook into any chain space you want. I'll do a corner for this round. Pull up a loop and pull it through the loop on your hook. And then chain 1 and chain 2 and chain 3 for a double crochet equivalent made of chains. I'm going to do 1 more stitch, a real double crochet right next to it, so you can see it's the same height. And I'm actually going to do the same thing I did last time. I'm going to do 2 stitches, so not a whole cluster, just 2/3 of a cluster. Work all the way around and then finish off this cluster with a double crochet stitch. So I'm doing a partial cluster, so basically starting and stopping my round there. So I'm going to do 2 stitches, work all the way around, and then do my last stitch. You can choose to do that once you understand the construction of your basic granny square. You can start it and stop it anywhere you want when you're doing different colors on each round. And I'm going to do the corner now. So chain 2, then a full granny cluster for the second cluster of the corner, which is 3 double crochet into the same corner chain space. There we go. Chain 1, because we need a chain 1 between clusters. 3 double crochet for this side chain space. All the side chain spaces only get 1 cluster, not 2 like the corners do. Chain 1, because we need to go between clusters, we need a chain 1. Single cluster here in the next side chain space. 3 double crochet for each cluster. And now we're at a corner again. See, the corner chain space is next. So we chain 1, then we work our corner pattern. So our corner pattern is, again, you should remember by now, but it's 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, so that we end up with 2 granny clusters separated by a chain 2. And there's 3. So there's our corner, 2 clusters worked into the same corner chain space with a chain 2 to create a corner chain space. Now chain 1 to go onto the next cluster, we need a chain 1 between. Now we have 2 side chain spaces, so we do 1 cluster in each, separated by a chain 1. So it's really basic, it's really repetitive, it's kind of fun. It can get a little monotonous doing the same thing over and over, but it does grow and look more beautiful with every round. So it's exciting to work the next group of stitches because you can see your square forming. Here we are at another corner, so I've made a chain 1 after this cluster. And what do? We work 2 clusters into the corner with a chain 2 between them. Let me know in the comments if you're remembering the pattern by this point in the video, if it's like, yeah, I know what I'm doing now, or if it's still a little bit confusing. I feel like the granny square just has a few particular rules, and if you follow those rules, you'll always end up with a great result. So 2 clusters into every corner with a chain 2 between, 1 cluster into every side chain space with 1 chain between. And then just double check your work by checking if you have 1, 2, 3, 4 clusters on every side in round 4, or 3, 1, 2, 3 clusters on every side on round 3, and so on. All right, I'm going to go ahead and finish up the rest of this side because it's just the same thing we did in the previous round, except we have 1 more cluster on each side. Here we had 1 side cluster. Here we'll have 1, 2 in every chain space along the edge. And then in the next round, if we were doing a 5th round, we would have 3 in between the corners because 1, 2, 3 plus 1, 2 equals 5. So it's just a lot of math and understanding the structure of our stitch and our square. All right, I'll meet you back here for the finishing off that last cluster and finishing the round. Okay, I finished the last side cluster before this corner. I just need to finish up this cluster here with, oops, I need to do a chain 1 between my clusters, and then I need to do 1 more double crochet to equal 3 for this cluster, 2 at the beginning of the round and 1 at the end. And how about this time I do the traditional ending, and you can see how that looks. So I'm going to insert my hook into this first stitch of the round, pull up a loop, pull that through for a slip stitch, and then chain 1, and then I'm going to cut that off and pull out this yarn tail and just pull that tight. So that's what you end up with. You do get a little knot at the edge. That's not my favorite thing, but that is the more traditional way of finishing off your round and joining. And now we can just weave in our ends, and we have a second granny square with 4 rounds. So I hope you enjoyed this video and this little tutorial on how to make a basic granny square. A couple other notes are, if you find that your granny square is twisting, that's something that can happen. These corners can kind of start to twist and twirl and start to look like a spiral. Generally, I find that 4 rounds or less, it doesn't really make a difference. It doesn't have a very strong effect. If it is happening for you, it doesn't happen for everyone. I think it has to do with the way you tension your yarn, maybe how you do your yarn overs or what yarn you're using and the twist of that yarn, but sometimes they can have that vortex-y spirally look. If that's happening for you, you can flip your work over and do every other round on the front and every other round on the back, and that will correct the spin, but you will have the reverse of the stitches every other round showing on the front of your work. It'll be kind of reversible, but it also has a slight difference from what the stitches look on the front and the back. But that's just something I like to mention when I talk about the basic granny square. It can happen. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does, but usually you only have to worry about it if you're doing 5 rounds or more. Also, you'll probably want to know how to join your granny squares because they are best when used together in a project. You can definitely use a single one for certain things like a coaster, maybe make a really big single one for a lap blanket or a cat mat. But if you want to make a bunch of the squares and join them together, there's a few different ways to do that. I do have a video on continuous join as you go technique for granny squares. Should check that out if you're interested. You can also join after the fact using mattress stitch or whip stitch or various crochet techniques. So I will have future videos on different joining techniques, but there's plenty out there if you do go ahead and make several of these and want to join them together into a larger project like a bag or a blanket or a garment. So let me know in the comments if this was helpful, and if you have any questions, of course, leave me a comment. Check the description of the video for links to anything I mentioned in the video, additional information, and my socials and shops. I hope you will subscribe to my channel, give the video a like, and share the video if you found it helpful. Okay, lastly, I wanted to create a digital version of the chart that I drew just so you have something a little bit more clean and easy to read. Definitely go ahead and screenshot this and save it for future use so that you have it to refer to next time you make a basic granny square. Thanks so much for watching and happy crafting!